Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
It's been nearly 3 months since the goods and services tax became effective. Industry is still grappling with the transition. Over the next 30 minutes, we take stock of the returns that have been filed so far and address issues faced by two specific sectors, the small and medium enterprises and the textile sector. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on this special broadcast on the GST Sentimeter. I'm Shereen Bhan. First up, here's how the picture looks on the GST returns that have been filed so far. In the first 20 days of August, 32 lakh returns were filed. These returns were for July, the first month of the GST implementation. Now compare that with the first 20 days of September. So far, only about 28.5 lakh returns have been filed, and these returns are for the month of August. Now, here's how the GST network comes under strain. People are filing their returns allegedly last minute. Yesterday was the deadline, and nearly 14 lakh returns were filed on the day of the deadline expiry. One day before the deadline, that's the 19th of September, nearly 7 lakh returns were filed. So in the first 18 days of September, only 7 lakh returns were filed. So there is some weight to the argument of the government asking people not to wait till the very end, to the very last day to file the returns. Joining us now to discuss all of this and more, the Finance Minister of Kerala, Thomas Isaac. Also with us, Anil Bhardwaj, the General Secretary of the Federation of Small and Medium Industries, and Sanjay Jain, the Chairman of the Confederation of Indian Textile Industry, Prateek Jain of PwC, and also Prakash Kumar, CEO of GST Network, will join us in just a bit. But let me come to you, Mr. Isaac, first. There has been a panel that's been set up under the GST Council to look at the issues related to the GST network, the technical issues related to the GST network. But if I were to ask you about what you make of the filing number, which looks very different in comparison to the month of July, would you be concerned, Mr. Isaac?
Yes, I think all states are very concerned that there has been a sharp decline in the revenue. But, there is a huge amount of IGST which is not yet allocated. Therefore, one will have to wait for a month or two before we can come to a realistic notion about the revenue that each state would get. People are worried about this. Anyway, central government will have to pay out compensation, something like 10,000 crores rupees for the first one.
Mr. Isaac, I'll come back to you in just a second, sir. We've got the CEO of the GST and joining us, Mr. Prakash Kumar. Mr. Kumar, appreciate you joining us. I want you to confirm for us, Mr. Kumar, the number that we are given to understand for filing up until the 20th of September has seen a sharp drop in comparison to the figure of 46.5 lakh returns of the GSTR 3B for the month of July. How would you explain this sharp decline that we've seen?
So, Shereen, the figure which you quoted for July is till date. So people have filed after the last date in big number.
Sure.
What we had on the last date was 32 lakhs for July month. And thereafter it has kept on increasing, and now we have reached a figure of 49. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've reached 49 lakhs for the month of July.
Yeah, which is
Can we now talk about the month of August, sir?
Yeah, for month of August till yesterday we had 29.5, and it has become already 31 as I speak. And yesterday we had 13.76 lakh returns which were filed in one day. Yeah.
Okay. So you're now saying that the number has reached 31 lakhs, and you would imagine that you will be able to get to the tally that we've seen of 49 lakhs, of
that
course,
is what
with
the trend says.
payment
Last
of
time
penalty.
also, last month also, people have kept on filing. In fact, today also we had some filing of July month. So it happens. People do file a little late also. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of revenues, sir, because from what my memory serves me correct, it was about 95,000 crores. That was the number as far as July is concerned. Do you believe that that is likely to be the trend for August as well?
Yeah, so that was 92,000, which had around 21,000 from IGST on imports, and remaining one was collected on the GST portal. This year also we are very close to it. Unfortunately, I can't give those figures. That is done by the government, but that is where we are.
But you're saying that you are very close to the number that we achieved in July.
I said that.
Okay. May I ask you, Mr. Kumar, about the problems that exporters are facing, and while there is a separate committee led by the Revenue Secretary that are trying to address the exporters' concerns, can you corroborate for us or verify for us that whether the refund form is already ready to go? What is the situation as far as the refund form for exports is concerned?
So that there is a committee headed by Revenue Secretary, as you rightly pointed out. They are working out the mechanism how it will be done, because the refund is now linked with GSTR1, GSTR2 for dates for which have been extended. So there has to be some other mechanism, and that is what the committee of officers is working on. You may be aware that GSTR1 needs to be filed by 10th of October and GSTR2 by 31st of October. So that's a long period. So the committee under Revenue Secretary, they are working on it to how to enable the refunds.
Okay. A final question, Mr. Kumar, before I let you go, because there is a separate committee that's also looking into the issues related to the GST and functionality. There was a meeting that happened in Bengaluru last weekend. Can you explain to us where things currently stand in terms of being able to address some of the concerns that have been raised?
Yeah, so there were two kinds of concerns or other issues which people had. Some of them were relating to what happened on 5th and 8th of September when people were filing GSTR1, and there was a software bug which led to slowing down of filing. But on the other hand, we had tested our system with 50,000 invoices getting into the system per hour, and on 9th itself we had more than 8 lakh returns which were filed once that issue was taken care of. And then some other issues were like invoice getting error out. Now that happens because the system checks the GST of the buyer. System also checks whether the invoices are not duplicate. System also checks credit note, debit note had reference to correct invoice which is already in the system.
Right.
So these are some of the things which system does, and if it is not correct, it errors out. So this is a completely new way of working for all our taxpayers. So people are learning and coming to it, because what this system does, that it takes in data only when it is correct in all aspects. So validation is done at the time of entry itself. So these are some of the challenges which we have fixed. Now there are certain other things which modules were not available. You are aware how the law and rules were formed, and after that what we have done, we have started delivering the modules based on the requirements. So as and when the requirements are coming, we have been delivering, because the development cycle and testing, etc., takes time. So some of those were there which they have prioritized, that these are the things which need to be made available or made operational. Yep.
All right, Mr. Kumar, appreciate you joining us. That's Mr. Prakash Kumar confirming the 31 lakh returns have been filed. That is the number as of today. Of course, he believes that the tally will match the number of July, because people will continue to file even beyond the deadline. Of course, they will need to pay the penalty, but that's the number as of today. 31 lakh returns have been filed. But let's go across now to Mr. Anil Bhardwaj, Secretary General of the Federation of Small and Medium Industries. Mr. Bhardwaj, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Let me ask you, sir, to explain to us, give us a reality check, a status check on what exactly are the pain points that are being felt by the SME sector today.
Some of the issues that MSMEs have been facing are related to infrastructure. They have not been able to connect to the GST network initially, and there were other hiccups also. But I think the bottlenecks kept shifting. Earlier the problem was with regards to registration and then filing, and now finally filing the GST-R3B. So, but I think the GST network also has been evolving, And I'm not too much, you can say, perturbed by the fact that there are still some numbers, some people who have not been able to file. Maybe that is also related to internet access in certain areas, particularly in rural areas. So I hope as the system improves, there would not be much of difference between the number that people have filed last month and this month.
Okay. If you're saying that you're not that concerned about the number of filings and you believe that that pace will pick up, take me through where the problem areas are. What is the confusion in the minds of SMEs at this point in time? I understand that there is confusion about the multiple tax slabs. There is issue as far as working capital is concerned because working capital is blocked. Whether they should opt for the composition scheme or not, that is a concern. Can you give me some sense of what your expectation now is from the GST Council and the government and where you're facing the most pain?
Most of the problems are related to classifications indeed. Because the similar products may be classified or you can say put differently at a different tax slab depending upon the uses. So that's why that is creating a lot of problems. And secondly, yes, people also have been worried and they have not been able to decide whether to go for composition scheme. If they go for composition scheme, particularly the smaller traders, then they are not in a position to do interstate trading. So all these problems are creating some kind of a churn and fear, and people are evaluating that what is the best option available for them. That's why also I think many people.
So what is the impact? What is the impact?
Filing.
Can you quantify for us, Mr. Bhardwaj? Can you quantify for us what the impact is on the SME space?
See, almost 20% of the MSME sectors are part of large supply chains. So those are the ones who have very quickly integrated with the GST network first. So there is not much of a problem that they are facing. The second set are, if you go down the chain, the informal sector is facing problem, and they are the ones who are kind of confronted with the existential question whether to be part of this system or whether to get out of the system.
Okay.
If they become part of the system, then they have to deal with the complexities of GST and GST network. Otherwise, if they don't, then they lose the business because people increasingly are opting for the supplier who is GST compliant.
Yeah, yeah. So there is that shift towards formalization that's taking place. Thomas Isaacs, you just heard what Mr. Bhardwaj had to say about some of the issues that the SME sector is faced with. I would imagine that the GST Council is cognizant of these pressures. What can we now realistically expect when the Council meets on the 6th of October, sir?
Yeah, I think it is unfortunate that we don't have a full-fledged GST Council meeting in this, quickly as possible, because there are so many problems that have risen. One set of problems deals with GSTN. Now there are too many glitches which are being taken care of, but it's irritating the dealers and customers. And two, the back-end modules are not ready, and therefore we are able to track and understand what's really happening, you see, access the data that we require. And three, and it's very important, that e-way bill is not ready. And therefore I fear there is a large movement of vehicles into, for example, my state, without proper uploading of bills taking place. So these are one set of issues with GSTN. Second set of issues related to SME sector. They are facing very serious problems unless Government of India takes it up seriously rather than just from the point of doing ease of business.
But Mr. Isaac, I mean, it's the GST Council, sir. It's not just the Government of India. All of you need to be cognizant of these challenges that they're faced with, and you collectively as the GST Council need to be able to address them, sir. It's not just the Government of India.
You're right. I'm saying the GST Council, I am saying, is unfortunate it's not meeting. Even next month is going to be video conferencing, which does not allow us to have a serious in-depth discussion of these issues. Therefore, it is going to get delayed. More it get delayed. I think the problems that the SME sector is facing is going to persist and have a serious implication for the growth in growth of GDP itself.
Serious implications for growth. Let me also bring in Sanjay Jain, Chairman of the Confederation of the Indian Textile Industry, into this conversation. Mr. Jain, appreciate you joining us. Can you give us a status check of where things stand? There were some or many concerns the textile industry had raised. Some had been addressed by the GST Council in some form or fashion. What is the state within the textile industry, specifically within the MSME sector of the textile industry?
Good evening and thank you for having me on the show. Textiles, as we know, is largely dominated by the MSME segment, and almost 60 to 70% of the industry is unorganized and fragmented. So all the concerns which were raised by Mr. Bhardwaj hold true for the textile MSME segment. And there are certain issues which I would like to highlight specific to textile industry. Firstly, fabric, which is a very large segment of the industry, was never under the value-added tax or excise structure before GST.
Yeah.
So as we all know, Surat was under strike for almost a month. And as a result, they are facing a situation where in their life they have never filed any returns. And suddenly they have a very complicated structured deadline base which they need to understand and file, set up IT systems, etc., etc. Secondly, job working, which is again a very prevalent thing in textile industry, where very small people are doing job work for main manufacturers. They suddenly again were exempted from excise or value-added tax. They suddenly have come under the GST network, which is again a big problem because most of them are family-based organizations. And as Mr. Bhardwaj said, even if they are below 20 lakhs, because they are supplying to large manufacturers, they are being they need to take GST number and comply, which is a big headache. And thirdly, another peculiar problem which has not been unfortunately raised is this 20 lakh exemption is just for intrastate dealing. We have a lot of brokers and agents who work in different states for a manufacturer. Now, I'll give you one classic example. I have an agent who does business and I pay him a yearly a commission of 2 lakh rupees. He is based in Bihar while I am headquartered in Delhi. So for that 2 lakh rupees of income, he needs to take a GST number and comply with all the rules and regulations, as otherwise he is not allowed to raise a bill on us. And even if I want, I can't pay him under reverse charges. So there is a lot of chaos, and a lot of small people, in fact, did no business in July. There was many I know have filed zero sales return or have not filed returns because they didn't know where to go and in which direction.
Are you seeing any improvement now?
And there's been a big demand destruction.
Are you seeing any improvement, Mr. Jain?
Due to GST,
you're saying there's been a big demand destruction, but are you now seeing any improvement,
and they were fearing
sir?
to make purchases, not knowing what the structure would be, how GST would treat them. Hence, the whole industry, apart from having administrative problems, is also having a demand destruction problem and is reeling under severe problem, cash crunch, liquidity crunches, etc.
You're watching our GST Sentimeter. Let's go across to Thomas Isaac. Mr. Isaac, it isn't a full-fledged meeting of the GST Council on the 6th of October, but there will be a meeting via video conference. We are given to understand that the concerns of exporters will be taken up as part of the agenda. Is that correct, sir?
That's right. See, some of the issues which are presented, just for example, the textile, I think there is a lack of appreciation for the problems there. Now, as I understand, the problem is slightly different. You find for raw material of synthetic fibers, the rate of duty is 18%. While for the fabrics, which is produced by small-scale units all over, largely, the rate of tax is only 5%. So you have got a big blocking of the credit. Only integrated firms, large-scale firms, will be able to take advantage of this. And this is in fact creating
Do you
serious
believe
problem all
to
over.
meaningfully address,
There are
we're running out of time, sir, so let me quickly ask you to meaningfully address the concerns raised by exporters. Will any legislative change be required, or do you believe that you will be able to address those without making any amendments to the law?
Yes, in fact, last meeting there was a serious discussion regarding the issues related to exporters, particularly because exports have taken a nosedive. So the one issue that was marked was the refunds. Now refunds are getting delayed, and therefore this has an impact upon the working capital requirement. And
do you have a number, sir?
So
was a number shared with you in terms of the quantum of the refund, sir?
No, there were no numbers presented. But GST system is in fact a deviation from what is existing in the past. And therefore, it has a burden, working capital requirement burden for the exporters. In fact, the economic advisor was arguing that to give a stimulus to the exports, it's very important this issue be tackled.
Right. Okay. Let me bring in Pratik. Pratik, and let me close this with final comments from you. The CEO of the GST and now clarifying to CNBC TV18 that 32 lakh filings or 31 lakh filings have happened as of today. So people have filed after the deadline as well. He's hoping that this will sink in with the number that we saw for the month of July, where filings also happened after the extension came into play. And even in terms of revenue, he hopes that the trend will be maintained. But you've been listening into all of the concerns that have been raised. What would you like to see happen on the 6th of October?
Yeah, so I think GSTN is now working better, certainly. And yesterday, I think there were 13-14 lakhs returns which were filed. That shows that system is now able to take more load, and it's happening better. But still, there are a lot of companies that I know could not file 3G because of system-related issues. So still, I think there is a lot of work to be done there. As far as the revenue is concerned, you have to bear in mind that a large portion of your Tran 1 credits will be adjusted in this month, and therefore I am expecting a dip in the August collection. And mind you, you haven't even started giving the refunds to the exporters. So let's see how it goes. I don't think that we should look at revenue month on month. We should give it a quarter before really a meaningful analysis can happen.
Sure.
Coming on 6th of October, I think exporter community is one, certainly, which was talked about. Government needs to do something on that. On the GSTN front, my suggestion is that, and what we have recommended to the government is that please don't have GSTR 1, 2, 3, at least till December. You continue with the summary return, which is Form 3B. And also don't experiment with things like e-way bill and all that at this point in time, because industry is really struggling even to file the summary return. So please be cognizant of the challenges on the ground, and then just stick with the summary returns till December. So I think that's something which the government needs to seriously consider.
All right, well, let's see what the GST Council does decide to do. As Mr. Isaac was pointing out as well, that there are concerns on the readiness or the preparedness even as far as the e-way bills are concerned. But Mr. Jain, Mr. Bharadwaj, Thomas Isaac, Pratik Jain, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on the GST Sentimeter as we take stock of the key sectors of the Indian economy that are grappling with the GST transition. We will continue to focus on the GST rollout, its implications. But for now, from all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.